Hey, what's up guys? Hope you're all doing well, and today we finally have the true successor to the GTX 1060 meet the new 1660. So Nvidia claimed that this is significantly faster than the 6GB GTX 1060 at a much lower cost. So ultimately that's what we're going to find out today. How much faster is the new 1660 compared to the 1060? And of course, if you are running a budget GPU or an older generation GPU, we will discuss whether it is worth the upgrade. So on paper, the GTX 1660 uses the same TU116 GPU that was used in the GTX 1660 Ti. However, two SMs have been removed, which results in 128 less CUDA cores. It is clocked slightly higher out of the box than both the 6GB GTX 1060 and the 1660 Ti, but as far as paper specs go, the new 1660 uses an identical memory system to its predecessor, and that's 6GB of a GDDR5 memory with a 192-bit bus width and a peak bandwidth of 192GB per second. The spec that matters though is the price, and well, the 1660 does hit that sweet spot for a true mainstream graphics card, starting at just $219 US. The card that we're testing today is a premium model that is factory overclocked and that will be launching at $239 US, but there will be plenty of models available at the base MSRP of $219. So the card that I've got here is MSI's Gaming X, and I have benchmarked this card both at stock and when overclocked, with a 100 MHz offset on the GPU and plus 950 MHz on the memory. Also keep in mind that the stock results of this card will differ from the actual $219 models, as again, it is a factory overclocked model out of the box. Alright, so without wasting any more time, let's jump straight into the game benchmark, starting with Shadow of the Tomb Raider running on DX12 at 1080p with the highest preset. So here the new 1660 runs at an average of 62.6 FPS on average. That's 17% faster than the RX 580 and about 14% slower than the 1660 Ti. When bumping the resolution up to 1440p, things do get a bit hard to run for the new 1660, but that's mostly because this title is quite demanding. As we'll see, you can actually use the 1660 for 1440p gaming for the most part, and in the most demanding titles, in the worst case, you will just need to tweak a couple of those graphics settings. Okay, so here we're looking at the frame rate over time graph in Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p, and I feel like the GTX 1070 serves as a pretty solid reference point for both the 1660 Ti and the 1660 because it has been out for quite some time and most of you know how it performs. Basically, the Ti model will be slightly faster in most titles, and the vanilla 1660 will be slightly under. In this chart, the 1660 has the best overall value compared to the other two GPUs, and we'll look at the value numbers a bit later. And I wanted to throw this chart in there just because it is a very popular game. I have begun benchmarking Apex Legends with my stack of GPUs, and here's what I've got so far. It's not as much as the other charts, but I believe it is enough for this review. In summary, the 1660 can run this game consistently above 60 FPS, and if you're prepared to drop a few settings down to around medium, you could easily see this card pushing beyond 144 FPS. In For Honor, we're seeing 92.6 FPS on average and a considerable boost once the card is overclocked, and here we're about 7.5% faster than the 6GB GTX 1060, one of the lower margins in our benchmark stack. At 1440p, it's perceivably equal to the previous Gen 1060 in this title, with only a few percentage points between them, but that does change when we look at a more popular title like Rainbow Six Siege. This title has proved over and over again that it heavily favors Nvidia's Turing architecture, potentially due to the concurrent floating point and integer compute that was introduced with the new Turing GPUs. That might be what's giving them the edge here, and we do see the new 1660 about 6% faster than the GTX 1070. At 1440p, it still holds a nice lead with the slowest 1% of frame rate still above 60 FPS, and as we've seen throughout all of these benchmarks, overclocking the 1660 yields a significant boost in performance, where here we see a nice 10% gain. Looking at things a little closer now between the new 1660 and the previous Gen 1070, and although I did notice the frame rate graph to be a bit noisier for the new Turing card, you'll see this even with the 2080 or 2080 Ti, but still average FPS was higher for the 1660. Nvidia are marketing this new GPU as an affordable way to get into high refresh rate 1080p gaming, and I would say that the results so far reflect that pretty accurately. A couple more games before we look at the averages though, and here in Project Cars 2 at 1080p, we see the 1660 about 5.7% faster than the 6GB GTX 1060. It's safe to say at this point that if you own a previous gen mid-tier card like the 1060 1660, RX 580 or RX 570, it's not worth the upgrade. For those running 1050 Ti or lower GPUs though, the 1660 could be a solid upgrade that makes high refresh rate 1080p gaming a lot easier to handle, and 1440p gaming something that's actually possible. Finishing off with Far Cry 5, I feel like this game serves as a fairly accurate and honest reference point for what you can expect in most titles. If I could only benchmark a single game for this video, this would probably be it. Here the 1660 is 8.8% faster than the RX 580 and 12.3% faster than the 6GB GTX 1060. At 1440p, the GTX 1660 still proves itself to be somewhat capable even in demanding titles, but again, if you want a buttery smooth experience here, you'll need to tweak a few settings if you're serious about playing at this resolution. Now taking a look at where the 1660 fits among its competitors when we look at averages, it is right between the RX 580 and the GTX 1070. Had we included the RX 590, we'd probably see performance pretty close there, but for a significantly lower price for the 1660. Now, current GPUs like the 1660 Ti and the RTX 2060 look seriously tempting with a significant performance margin over the standard 1660. However, when we consider the price of all of these cards, the 1660 does come out on top. For $219, it simply cannot be beaten in terms of value if you want to game at high refresh rates. Now, I know I've used a factory overclocked card for benchmarking, but I also have for every other card in the stack except for the GTX 1070, so it's mostly a fair comparison. We can see that the RX 570 does pretty much match it in terms of value, just keep note that it's over 20% slower. Power consumption was also very light, so no issues there at all, slightly lower than the 6GB GTX 1060. And a quick note on thermals and noise, which you could probably guess was no issue at this point. I'd go as far as saying that the premium cooler on this Gaming X model from MSI was a bit overkill, with the card barely sitting above 60 degrees C with the fan speed below 50%. However, for the additional $20 over the base MSRP, I would actually consider grabbing the Gaming X if thermals, noise, and the overall look of the card matter to you somewhat. It is honestly quite rare that I'd recommend premium models over the base MSRP models unless you're looking at high-end GPUs, but here the extra $20 does seem to go a long way. In terms of the new GTX 1660 as a whole, it pretty much stands alongside the RX 570 8GB in terms of value. The performance and value is basically linearly scaled down from the 1660 Ti, so if you were planning on upgrading to a GPU closer to that $200 mark, the 1660 is simply your best choice. This means that the long-lived RX 580 that currently sells for about $200 US should not really be considered in my opinion. The RX 570 still remains the budget king, with the 4GB models going for as low as $129 US, but the way that Nvidia are moving things along with their new 16 series GPUs, I'd say you can probably expect an RX 570 Slayer in the coming months. For now though, those looking to buy a GPU around the $220 US mark, the new GTX 1660 is simply the best choice. I would really recommend running something like this alongside a Ryzen 2600 or an Intel i5-8400. There, the value truly is insane if you are looking to game at 1080p. And to be honest, at 1080p for competitive titles like Apex Legends, Overwatch, Fortnite, this GPU is pretty much going to be perfect in my opinion. So guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on the new GTX 1660 as a whole. Feel free to drop your comments down below. And if you enjoyed this performance review, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for future content. As always guys, a huge thanks for watching. I will see you all in the next one.